Trust in what you love, continue to do it, and it will take you where you need to go. Don't get stuck where you have not succeeded. Go on to something else. You don't know what will unfold. Together, those quotes, both from Natalie Goldberg, who's one of my favorite writers and teachers of writing, they are a great depiction of what I strive to live and breathe by. The power of following our curiosity, energy, and passion to find things that authentically light you up and work for you. Today, we're going to get into the topic of where experimentation fits into life and business, and how try before you buy can actually be a winning strategy. Welcome to Small Business Casual, where we take the dream we're building seriously, with a hefty dose of laughing at ourselves along the way. I'm your host, small business copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm here to help you answer questions like, does my business need a lead magnet? And how the heck do I talk to people at a networking event? All while making it fun and, you guessed it, keeping it casual. One thing I used to constantly beat myself up about was this track record I had of pivots and changes. My wake of past jobs, 99% of which were in my 20s. My startings and my stoppings, my openings and my closings, my moving, befriending, defriending, ideating, unraveling. For some reason, it's always been really important to me to be seen as loyal, dependable, reliable, stable, unwavering. I've always wanted that for my life. I've always wanted to have this one thing that I always do, the one thing you can rely on day in and day out. Put me in a little box, bam, bam, bam. The consistent one, the trustworthy one, the long-term one. But at the same time, feel like I'm just pretty much over here like blowing in the wind half the time, clutching on for dear life as I go through changes and over the speed bumps and bouncing back and forth from a complete lack of enthusiasm to sheer and utter hyperdrive. Personally and professionally, I am a little bit of a dichotomy, you see. So let's just go into my astrology a little bit, which I don't fully buy into, but also a couple other little personality tests. So I, according to my astrology, am a Taurus with a Cancer moon, meaning I love sameness, routine, cozy, stability, security, also red, slightly stubborn. I am a manifesting generator in the human design, and though according to human design, they favor change, excitement, thrill, aliveness, multi-passionate living. And I am an Enneagram 6 in the Enneagram world, stable, secure, also reactive to emotions, people, situations, and more. Likes authority, doesn't like authority, likes having structure, doesn't like having structure. They go both ways. So I always like to say I'm one part heart and one part science, because truly I feel like half the time I'm up in my head and half the time the heart is blazing the trail. Feeling too much, thinking too much, just a little bit too much. Now, I don't totally buy into all this stuff. I think there's like little seeds of truth in everything. I really love the Enneagram, but I kind of take the rest with a grain of salt. But weirdly, a lot of the combos actually do kind of ring true for me. I both cannot stand to leave my house, be torn from my routine. I like people to know what they're getting from me, and I like to know what I'm getting from people, and I like to know what I'm getting from life. I read menus a week in advance of going out to eat. I have a lifetime supply of Band-Aids and safety pins in every single purse I own. But also, I love, and I'm actually very open to trying new things. I'm very open-minded, and I do love to try things that are like right for me or feel right for me or maybe are right for me, and that I could see myself getting passionate and excited about. Can you relate to these things? Can you relate to going both ways like this? Am I just a total weirdo over here? I would love to hear if this is describing you too. But this is why I think that on this podcast, I also really like the approach of presenting you with a lot of different topics, because I find that if I just talk about one thing day in and day out, like copywriting, for example, or content creation or whatever, it doesn't even matter. If I just talk about one thing all the time, it becomes sheer and utter boredom for me. But at the same time, I like to be known for one thing in my business, but I like it to be a big umbrella. So like my umbrella is I help people to market themselves loud and clear through really good voice. Now, whether that voice is on their podcast or on their copy or through their whole business like assets, that's kind of where I take that position. But I like to be known for one thing, but I also like that thing to be like kind of a nice broad umbrella. And it took me a really long time to realize that this is just kind of who I am. Like, I'm a little bit of a dichotomy. I like a consistent message, but I don't want to have to pick a niche. I like the durability of having been in business for 12 years. But in that time span, I've actually had 3 different businesses and I've closed 2. I've also had more jobs than I am years in age, which that only has 2 more years to ring true. Thank goodness. I've moved a bunch. I transferred college, transferred back, switched entirely from what I was studying in college to what I do now. I've had the relationships that fizzled and friendships that sizzled, and I've changed my style and my diet and like all these things. But I do really think that the core of who I am has stayed pretty much tried and true since I was young. And there's a lot that has stayed the same, actually. Like, I even have some of the same clothes that I did when I was 16, and I like still wear them. I still kind of dress like I did when I was a kid. Like, I just kind of am the same person. But I do definitely see where I have tried on a whole lot of identities. Had I not done all the experimenting that I had, living here and living there and trying out different ways of being and being part of different groups and relationship types and reading a lot of wacky topics, a wide variety, I don't think I would know so much about the core of who I am. And I don't think I would know so much about what I truly love and value at the end of it all. So anyway, way more than enough about me. I want to talk about you, and I want to talk about how this kind of experimental mindset can actually show up for us in our businesses too. And I want you to keep listening even if you don't have a business, because it doesn't really matter. Like, even if you're just if you're working for somebody else, if you have a creative venture of your own, if you're not employed at all, these benefits can apply to us all throughout our lives. And really quick, before I get into the crux of today's message, I also want to share a very closely related recent episode by my friend Karen Kenny, host of The Karen Kenny Show. The episode is called Find Out for Yourself. I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes. And in this episode, I mean, it's been really crazy how in sync we are lately, but in this episode, she talks about why it is so important to stop believing everybody else's opinions and to check things out, to start finding out for yourself what rings true for you. So she actually shares some really funny and surprising stories from an experiment that she did, and talks about how these real life encounters with strangers kind of took her to a place that she never would have expected. So I would love for you to check out that episode if you're kind of into this. I'm super duper into the experimentation, so I'm just like, I want all the things. So check that out. It's in the show notes. And if you want to just find it for yourself, it's at KarenKenny.com/podcast. All right, but now let's get into experimentation on this end. So what do I mean by experimentation? All right, hold on. Let me get out my dictionary here and we will define it together. Experimentation is the action or process of trying out new ideas, methods, or activities. The process of performing a scientific procedure, especially in a laboratory, to determine something. There we go. We have our heart and our science approach right there. In a nutshell, it is trying something to see what happens, but not needing to commit forever. So you get to like try before you buy, with low stakes opportunities that provide high learning and impact. And in my mind, you really can't fail when you experiment, because the whole thing is just gathering data. It's like in the chemistry lab in college, which I didn't do so well in. But the reason I love this mindset shift is that experimentation requires kind of letting go of that whole like, oh my gosh, I have to get this right the first time. It's all about curiosity, not perfection, not judging yourself. And you are allowed to just try things and then walk away from them. No big deal. So why I think that this matters is because so often what I see is that people do not start things because they're afraid of committing. Or they go all in on things and then they peter out and stop when it gets too hard, or they can't be consistent, or they find out they don't like it, or they bit off more than they can chew. Too many people stay stuck because they never try anything new, and it is kind of like that nice happy ground for all of those kind of traps we can fall into. It's that happy middle space between like paralysis, not being able to go anywhere, and reckless abandon. So I kind of love it. And there's actually a lot of power in it. Here are some stats. We're going to get some nerd stats on the matter. Companies that experiment regularly on average see 11% more revenue than companies who don't. There's a link that I found, which I'll include in the show notes, by Vima. I found it on Innovation, and I'll make sure I include that on the show notes so you can see that stat. Another stat is A/B testing, which is the kind of testing you would use for like emails or marketing campaigns. That can actually increase conversion rates by 20 to 49%, meaning when businesses experiment with page elements, when they test to see which marketing messages work best, they tend to win big in the long run. Most successful businesses have tried many, many things that did not work. If you look at like the Spanx founder, Sarah Blakely. She tried countless prototypes. I could not find an exact number, and she worked her butt off, getting no after no after no on her highly successful now product, Spanx. Thomas Edison, he had over 10,000 experiments before he got to that light bulb. So in my opinion, the faster you experiment, the faster you fail, the faster you learn and figure out what you do want to be doing and how you do want to do it. People who experiment also report higher satisfaction with their choices versus people who agonize over it or don't ever try in the first place. And trying it out before you dive all in, it can kind of reduce some of that stress and decision fatigue. And one thing I've noticed for myself, which is exactly what Karen Kenny is saying in her episode, is sometimes you can't think yourself to the right answer. You can't pros and cons list your way there. You have to try it and see how you feel once you get into it. So the bottom line is experimentation. It is faster learning, better decisions, and usually less regret. The cost of not experimenting is you stay stuck and you're always kind of wondering, well, what if? So I wanted to share some of the experiments I've done recently. And I thought it might be helpful so that you can hear some examples of both life and business experiments and maybe steal some of these and apply them for yourselves. Actually, a lot of my services and offerings, they all just kind of came through experimentation. So like if I ever write a social media content bank for somebody, that was just a total and utter experiment. If I do a podcast guest or host bundle, that started off as an experiment. My VIP copywriting day, that's a complete experiment right now. We'll see how that goes. So a lot of the things that are now like really my brand messaging guides, a lot of the things that are staples of my business have actually just started out as like, well, let's just give it a shot. So that's some inspiration for you right there. But the first experiment I wanted to share with you that I started a couple years ago is my 104 experiments on Substack. So what I did is I started a Substack and the goal was to document 104 experiments. I was trying to count down from age 38 to age 40. And in my experiments, I tried all sorts of things: breath work, cold dipping, live music, hypnosis, a book club, morning pages, all kinds of things. The list goes on and on. This crazy dance. It was so fun. So what happened with that experiment was it was really great. I loved the experimenting, but I started to get really, really inconsistent with it, and I noticed I couldn't keep up. So I got to like 50 experiments, and now I'll add here and there, but I'm definitely not regular about it. So what I learned is, okay, I love this approach. I love that journalistic style, that storytelling, that experimenting, but I don't think that this isn't going to be like, I can't keep this up as a regular staple in my life. I can't always be doing something every single week and like reporting back about it. It did, however, teach me something for my business. I loved Substack as a platform. And so what I ended up doing is actually moving my entire, a lot of my content over there and my email newsletter over there. So the experiment was not for nothing. It taught me that I love Substack. I wanted to be there. I just knew that I couldn't keep up that 104 experiments format super, super consistently. My second experiment I wanted to share with you is one I did recently. It was called the Candid Content Collab. I did this on March 27th, and it was an in-person content creation day at Hannah Grimes Center in Keene. It was a total and utter experiment. And what we did is we were kind of working through content. We were taking pictures together and planning things out. And it was amazing. People had so much fun. It was a huge need. We booked out the workshop, and I learned so much, and I learned how I could actually make this a thing for like my clients and other people and do this again, and how to really like work with the group that I had. And I also learned that it could have probably been shorter. They really liked the instruction at the beginning, but then when it got to the actual photos, we could have kind of done it a little bit shorter. And then we also could have spoken more to that actual content calendar piece so that we could specifically tie the photos that they were getting to goals that they had coming up in Q2. A big learning experiment, but overall so good. The third thing I experimented on was something called a creativepreneur support group. I started like a support group with fellow web designers, copywriters, like-minded individuals, creatives, just like a little, I wanted to just try this out and gather people in my own little world and see how it went. Our first one went really well. We planned a second one, and guess what? I realized I did not have the capacity to keep on going with it. But people were getting business from each other in there and building relationships. And so I delegated it. I handed over the torch, and I asked somebody else if they wouldn't mind running it, and they ran with it. So now I'm able to like go and enjoy that space. And I don't always have to be the one doing it. So that was a really good learning opportunity, good experiment. Number 4, last night, as I'm recording this, it's actually in April right now as I'm recording this, but I went to a pitching to literary magazines workshop at the 11th Letter in Concord, New Hampshire. I actually went with my friend Karen Kenny, who I mentioned her podcast. So the workshop was kind of teaching you how to present your work to magazines, to literary publications, to journals, things like that. I learned so much. I gained so much like inspiration and ideas, and like I didn't even know that these opportunities existed. And you can bet your bottom dollar I'm going to experiment with the next part of it, which is actually pitching some of those things. So I really loved that. And I thought it was really nice that I was able to take a workshop that was 2-3 hours long, before just like going all in on that, and before diving into like a whole entire new path or maybe taking a course on it, right? So I really loved that. Tonight, actually, as this episode is releasing, I have a class, a writing cohort, which I've never been part of one before. I signed up for one. It's on like speaking with different voices and different perspectives, and I'm really excited about it. So I'll let you know how that goes. But that's just going to be a great experiment for me as a writer, and really shining a light on like what I'm discovering about myself as a writer and keeping myself accountable to do a project every week. And I'm really looking forward to the camaraderie in that group as well. So that starts tonight. The other thing that I have been experimenting with lately is new models of ways to offer services for my clients. So I'm just like kind of brainstorming on how I can offer them like more long-term, bigger picture kind of solutions and what that really looks like. Does it mean I move from a project kind of thing to a retainer kind of thing? All that TBD, but I'm going to try it out with a couple people and we'll go from there. Pinterest marketing is another thing I've been experimenting with for this podcast, actually. And I'm going to include a link to that in the show notes if you want to check out the Pinterest. But I learned about Pinterest marketing through Andy Smiley, She came and spoke to our New England podcasters group, and she kind of like taught us the ropes. So I'm just kind of learning to see if Pinterest is going to work to help bring new listeners into the show. And if you found the show through Pinterest, hi, welcome. I'm so happy. So I'll keep you posted on that. They say to give that experiment about 6 months. So we're coming up on, probably in June. I'll sort of check in on that, see how it's going, see how the show stats are going and things like that, and see if it's worth keeping up with. And maybe I just cut back on the frequency that I'm sharing in that way. But it's a really nice platform for just like, you can just post and then like step away from it. You don't always have to be on it. You don't always have to be engaging with it. You just have to be consistent. And I love that about it. So the other thing I did try experimenting with, which you were witness to, is different formats in my podcast. So like we tried the love notes thing every Friday, and I was like, holy moly, that is a little too much for me to do every single week. I've tried having guests on the show. I've tried kind of moving the intro to a different like format and things like that. So I always love testing these things, seeing if I get a good download rate, but not just the downloads. I always also look at those listen through rates, and that's going to help me know, do I want shorter episodes? Do I want longer episodes? Do I want guest episodes, et cetera, et cetera. So what I learned in those experiments is in this instance, it really is important to look at the data versus just assume what people want. So you really do have to try something out, give it a go, give it a fair shake, measure it, and then decide. And of course, if you just like doing it, then more power to you. Keep on doing it your way. But I do think that data can really show you like, okay, is this actually worth my time? One experiment I think everybody who wants to start a podcast should do, or be a guest on a podcast. Well, start a podcast is be a guest on somebody else's. So long before I started Small Business Casual, I was a guest on other people's podcasts talking about copy and marketing and content creation. And I got to really lean into those topics there. And that is how I knew, because I had another podcast at the time called She Built This. So that was how I really knew that like, okay, these are the topics that I really want to be playing around with. And I knew that I had to start this show. So I also love podcast guesting before starting your own, because you really get to learn the format, the flow. You get super comfortable behind a mic. You get super comfortable hearing your voice, and you get to test the waters. You get to test the waters on what it's like to market the episode, because you as a guest have to be sharing your episodes. So this way you don't have to just jump in cold, start a whole podcast from scratch. You can experiment first and see if podcasting is even for you. And of course, it's a little bit different when you guest versus have your own, but it is still a very good indicator of whether or not this is even a medium you enjoy. Another experiment that I recommend everybody do is to visit a group before you sign, seal, and deliver and join the group. I always like to, in fact, I like to visit groups before I even speak at a group, because that way I kind of am a little bit familiar with some of the faces in the group. It feels a little bit more comfortable for me. But I do like attending groups as a guest a couple of times. I'm usually like a 3-time kind of person before I commit to a membership, because what I found is if I do it the other way, if I just like, yep, sign me up, I'm part of this group, then I may end up ruling it out as a bad fit. And then I've spent my money and my time and my energy, and it may also not look really great for you when you pull out of the community after you've said yes to it. So that applies to free communities and free groups, but you can always visit before you sign up and join, unless, of course, there's like a paywall. But maybe you ask the group leader if it's okay for you to just check it out one time. Maybe. I've had people do that to me, and it's really, really a nice way to make sure that I'm not diving into something I'm not 100% sold on. So one pattern I hope that you've noticed is that not all, these experiments are not like huge. They're not like groundbreaking. And a lot of them I stopped. A lot of them I was like, okay, that's too much time. That's too much effort. I can't be consistent with that. Whatever. It didn't work. But I don't consider those a failure because, I do. I failed. I failed in what I tried to do. But I don't ever consider experimenting failure because they always just kind of teach you what your next right step is, or what you maybe do like, or maybe what you don't like. And I think that's great. I don't think there is failure when it comes to that. I think it's a great way to take a bet on your marketing and your business and your creative venture and see where the road leads you, because you never know what that outcome is going to be. And I feel like that's part of the fun. Will I love it? Will I hate it? Who knows? Let's do it. Sometimes some of these little experiments that I've run have become an entirely new lifestyle commitment, or they've become like a really key part of my business. Like I shared at the beginning, with a lot of my services were just experimental at the beginning. Some have led to bigger commitments, right? Like the example of the Substack newsletter or this podcast. And some have for sure been like, nope, not for me, which is super duper valuable information also. But I really do think that the act of trying helps you to keep on moving forward. Even if that's not the path you keep on going down, it usually takes you to that next right step. So I wanted to give you 5 really simple steps on experimenting in your own business and life, just in case you want a place to get started. And then I'm going to give you some examples. I thought you might give a whirl for yourself. So 5 quick steps. We'll go through these fast. Number 1, figure out what you're curious about. What's pulling at you? What do you keep thinking about, but you haven't tried it yet? What ideas do you have? What are things you see other people do that make you go, I wonder. So figure out what those things are, and then step 2, make yourself a low stakes experiment. You don't have to commit forever. Remember, you're just committing to a trial period. I love the rule of 3. So I set a time limit for myself, like 3 days, 3 times, 3 months, 30 days, whatever. Try it out. And then see how you feel after that low stakes. So check in once you said you were going to. But like trying a new platform for a month, like a new social media platform, or attending a networking event before joining the group, or guesting on 3 podcasts before you start your own. So pick a low stake and see how you feel about it. And then step 3, I think pick a metric to track. So even if it's just joy, ask yourself, okay, what does success look like for this experiment? And what do I want out of this experiment, basically? So some examples, like for Pinterest, is your podcast getting more traffic? Is your website getting more traffic? For those Love Notes episodes I did, was the listen through rate high? Even if the downloads were low, was the listen through rate high? If I'm doing a workshop, did I learn something actionable putting it on? And you don't have to pick 47 different things. You just pick one metric that you're going to track, one thing that for you, this would be a successful experiment. This is what you want out of that experiment. This is what matters to me. Pick that thing and pay attention to it. Step 4, you got to debrief. You got to unpack it. What did you learn? What did you enjoy about it? Would you do it again? What would you change? Ask yourself those questions after the experiment. Write about it if you want to, and share with others. But then that way you have the information to decide if you want to move forward. And then step 5, decide. Are you going to keep, pivot, or quit? Are you going to love it? Or are you going to list it? Is it working and you're going all in? Do you need to tweak something, but it has potential to work if you just pivot a little bit, or you totally want to quit and it taught you that, nope, that is not for me? That's really valuable information too. But again, I love that experimenting just kind of like gives you this permission to try things, walk away, change your mind. You get to dip your toes in prior to committing. And I wanted to give you just a few quick ideas before we wrap up. So in business, I I've got 6 for you if you care to accept the assignment. So, and you can pick any of these. Number 1, test a new content format. So maybe you always do carousel posts. Try a video, try a podcast. Experiment with your email frequency. If you always send weekly, maybe you send every other weekly. If you always send every other weekly, maybe you try going to weekly. Try a new pricing model. So if you're on retainer, maybe you try projects. Maybe you try hourly. Maybe you try packages. And you can just try it with like one client. You don't need to, overhaul your whole entire business. Batch your content and see if that saves you time. See if you enjoy doing it. See if you get more creative energy when you batch. Offer a new service that you might be thinking about to a couple clients behind the scenes before announcing it, before adding it to your website. And like I said, try a new social platform for a little bit of time. In life, you can join a group like a book club or a reading group or a writing group for one session before committing. You can try a new hobby and you can say, I'm going to give this 3 months, or I'm going to give this the first beginner's class. You can experiment with your morning routine. Like, what if you walked first thing in the morning instead of scrolled your phone? What if you read a book outside as your morning? Another on the reading is reading books outside your usual genre. Pick up a book that you maybe wouldn't be so likely to read and check it out. Take a workshop before enrolling in a full course or signing up to have somebody be your coach, right? Or maybe you can even listen to the podcast with that author or the course teacher before you buy. And then, this is just another one, but if you're going to move, if you're like thinking of where you want to move, stay a couple weeks there. Get an Airbnb and check it out. Stay in the city, stay in the town and check it out a little bit and get familiar with it before you decide to move. So it's just simply following where your energy and your curiosity is. But I want to remind us that experimentation is not flaky or wishy-washy. You don't have to have anything figured out before you start. So go back to Natalie Goldberg's quotes at the beginning. Trust in what you love. Continue to do it, and it will take you to where you need to go. Don't get stuck on where you have not succeeded. Go on to something else. You don't know what will unfold. So pick one thing you've been curious about. Make it nice and low stakes for yourself. Give yourself a time limit. Track your metric, see what happens, because the only way you're going to know if something works for you is to try it for yourself. Make sure you check out the show notes for all the links I mentioned. And next week, we are celebrating. It's my 40th birthday, and it's Small Business Casual's 3rd birthday, which I cannot hardly believe either of those things. But I'm going to make it sheer and utter fun and just share some of the behind the scenes things about this podcast, my business, like maybe me a little bit, who knows what else. But I'll see you then. And I hope you have fun experimenting and let me know what you try. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of Small Business Casual. If you love the show, make sure to rate, review, and share it with a frazzled business owner that you care about. Because this shouldn't feel like a roller coaster ride, more like a scenic train ride with snacks. Don't forget those snacks.